BC comes along one day and he sees a big rock up on top of a hill. He looks over the cliff down below. He sees some more rocks down below that are just like the ones on top. So BC has a really neat idea. He goes over to the rock on the top of the hill and he carves a face on it. He shinnies down the rope. He goes over to the rocks on the bottom of the hill and he carves identical faces on the rocks at the bottom of the hill. Now about this time his buddy comes along and says, "What is this?" And BC says, "A million years from now, they'll blow their brains trying to figure out how we got the big dude up on the cliff." Now, the important thing to understand here is that something like that is not only a reasonable suggestion, but we know, in fact, that things like this have happened. And some of you may remember a book called Chariot of the Gods, which later became a movie. There was a television series. It was written by a man by the name of Erich von Däniken. And what he proposed was that there was all kinds of proofs that alien civilizations have systematically visited the earth. And the kind of thing that he did was, if you haven't seen this, that he went to places like Nazca in South America, and he showed landing strips that he said were places where the aliens had landed and taken off in their space vehicles. Near these, there were beautiful hieroglyphics drawn on the ground, pictures which he said were demonstrations that people from outer space had put marks on the ground that couldn't have been done by people on the ground so they could locate their runways. You know, right away you have questions to think about with something like that. For instance, if an alien can navigate all over the galaxy, do they need a war eagle painted on the ground to find the runway? Another example of the kind of thing that von Däniken presents to us is he takes us to Egypt and he shows us the pyramids. And he says, now there's absolutely no way that anybody could have put these huge rocks up and made these monstrous structures. And he also tries to suggest to us that there's some kind of alien intelligence that controlled the dimensions here, because he says, okay, if you multiply the perimeter of the pyramid by its altitude, you get a multiple of the distance to the sun. Now, in this type of thing, you have to raise the question of, what about the people that were there? You know, you don't build a pyramid in your backyard without somebody seeing it. Did they explain how these were erected? And the answer is, yeah, we know how those were erected. We know that they used ramps. We know that they used simple machines. And what von Däniken apparently didn't know at the time was that when the pyramids were built, they were faced with white marble. They might have looked something like this in the morning sun. Now, you remember the little calculation of multiplying the perimeter by the altitude and getting the distance to the sun. If you're missing 15% of the rocks, what does that do to that calculation?